It takes energy. It takes courage. It takes commitment. A hunger to live life at another level. A life of true fulfillment. Welcome to the Extraordinary Living Podcast, where Jackie Senatori interviews leading experts from around the world, extracting their wisdom, giving you the tools, tips, and tricks on how to go from ordinary to extraordinary. Get ready to start living a healthier and more empowered life. Here she is, your host, Jackie Senatori.
Sonja O'Hara is an award-winning writer, actress, and director who recently signed with William Morris Endeavor, Management 360, and Industry Entertainment. She was selected as one of the top 10 filmmakers to watch by Independent Magazine, chosen by a jury from Movie Maker Magazine, the Sundance Institute, and Austin Film Festival. Past recipients include Barry Jenkins, Oscar-winning director of Moonlight. Sonja recently directed the feature film Root Letter, which is an adaptation of the popular Japanese video game written by Tribeca Film Festival Narrative Prize winner David Ebeltoff, which was released in 2020. Sonja also wrote and directed and starred in the critically acclaimed series Doomsday, which on Amazon won Best Series at HBO's ITV Fest. As streaming nominee for Best Indie Series, Sonja was presented the Best Director Award out of 4,000 submissions at the New York Television Film Festival. Sonja was a guest speaker at SXSW Film Festival on the episodic TV panel. Her upcoming series Astral was greenlit by Adaptive Studios, and she will write, act, and direct all 6 episodes. For more information on Sonja, please visit sonjaohara.com. So with all that being said, let's welcome Sonja to the show. Hi, Sonja.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So what does it feel like to hear all that introduction of everything that you accomplished?
It feels very strange and a bit like an out-of-body experience because it doesn't quite feel like it could be me. Like it sounds like a more notable person, and I just know myself as like the weird, quirky girl in acting school that I'll always like ultimately sort of feel like inside, you know?
Right. Well, it's good to know you still kind of feel like yourself and have that root, you know?
God, yes. No, I completely have always felt exactly the same. And as you get more of these titles and accolades, they help you professionally get new jobs, and that's great. And like, I'll share them on the internet, but it's the last thing I want to talk about when I'm with my friends at brunch or something, you know?
Yeah. So for people listening, you and I go way back. I think just like Chris Connell, who's on one of the previous shows, we've known each other pretty much for like 17 years now, since
teenagers at acting school in New York.
Yes. And we have a commonality because you and I are both Canadian, one of the 4 Canadians in that school that year.
Yeah, we were a super ambitious group, and we were having to work harder than other people just to attend school because we'd have to get a visa and go through everything just to be able to even be in the country.
Right.
Crazy.
Oh, yeah. I remember the visa process.
Yeah.
It was shortly after 9/11 too. So we had a whole bunch of hoops to jump through to move to New York.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit before we get into it, like where you grew up, where you're from, and when did you first know you wanted to be an actor, entertainer?
I'm from a fishing village in Nova Scotia, Canada. And I had probably the good fortune of my mother's a French teacher. And the person who was my French teacher, who was her friend, was Ellen Page's mother from Juno. And because of that, when I was a little kid of like 7, 8, 9 years old, I knew that this girl was acting and had gotten a part in a Canadian series called Pit Pony. And I remember being like a little kid sitting in French class and just being like, I want to do this thing more than anything in the world. And if this cool, smart, quirky little girl can get these TV roles, it suddenly felt possible. And I got the bug and started auditioning for school plays and doing all the things you do as a kid, but then also following what Ellen was doing and getting an agent at 10 years old and starting to audition as a kid. Not with any of the success or luck that Ellen Page had, and not luck. She's amazing and earned all of it. But I didn't have that kind of childhood success, but I was that focused and passionate and hungry and was auditioning against her for like little movies.
That's amazing to know. You know, you were definitely one of the people in school that had that drive and had that hunger. And anybody who knew you knew that this was, you could feel it. You could feel your passion for the work and to achieve. And all that you have achieved, I think a lot of us watching and witnessing your success are just super proud that hard work pays off and that a dream comes true.
Thank you. it didn't come about the way that I hoped or imagined that all of it would happen. Like, I thought there were some people in our acting school that right away were favorites of the administration and were getting opportunities to audition for things. And they were often really pretty, all-American looking students. And we both know who we're talking about, who got sort of fast-tracked by the school, not because they were the most ambitious or hungry or passionate, but because they looked like they could be on a soap opera or CW show right at the point of time that we were graduating. And I so wanted to be one of those students who was put in like the racehorse class. And things didn't come to me that easily, but I knew what I had was that I would work harder and that I would never give up. And I became obsessed with finding ways to like break into the industry. And like that became my superpower.
Did that develop something in you that you used going forward in still accomplishing, that it didn't come to you so easy or wasn't just given to you?
I am so grateful that it didn't come that easily. Like, it wasn't that I wasn't a good actor or anything like that. It was just that, I was younger than the other students. I went to school in New York at 17 when I arrived, and we had people that were in their early 20s that we were competing against. So already the emotional maturity of a 17-year-old versus somebody in their 20s who already looks a certain way. Like, I felt like I was always having to work extra hard to catch up. Then there was the fact that I felt like I had a thick Canadian accent at that point.
Right.
And I was having to do everything I could just to be able to, sound like an American. And I felt like I had a certain teacher named Richard Omar who was incredibly tough on me. And the harder he was on me, the more determined I was to quote unquote prove him wrong. But I think that he wasn't like, that was just a smart tactic to make people want it more. Like, I think it's actually in hindsight good teaching, because then you feel like you have to step up and work harder to find your place in the world. And I'm grateful that it was a challenge, because if it had been easy, maybe I still wouldn't be so obsessed with it. But it's always been this elusive thing that I've been like reaching for. And that kept it like alive,
Yeah. And it's like that challenge of having to overcome that challenge that makes you like ambitious and strong.
Yes.
Does it make it so much more enjoyable? And we'll get into the awards, but does it make it so much more enjoyable, like when you achieve it, when you won that award?
Yeah. Like, it's made every bit of it. Like, I'm somebody that every year for New Year's, and I've been doing this for the last 15 years, I keep 10 New Year's resolutions a year. And they're usually 10, almost all career resolutions. And every time that I achieve one of those goals, like, I feel like that is the best feeling in the world. Like, no amount of money or sex or anything could feel as good as checking a life goal off of a list. So that's sort of what it's become for me.
And I love that you post that on your Facebook. Every year I've watched you post things, and you're super honest and super vulnerable in what you have accomplished to acknowledge and be grateful for. And then also
what I haven't accomplished yet.
Right.
Yeah.
The details of here's what I want people. I'm completely being visible. Mm-hmm. So this is what I'm going to set out to do and accomplish.
And I learned through doing that how to make goals that are both reasonable and attainable, but still make you stretch enough that you have to work really hard to achieve them, but not making goals that are entirely out of your control. Because the first couple years of doing it, I was like, I want to book a film that goes to Sundance, and I want to get a power agent. But at that point, I didn't have the skill set to be able to achieve those things. So then I started breaking it down more to, I want to audition for 10 casting directors that cast the kind of films that eventually go to Sundance. So then the next year I'm on their radar and I'm more likely to be cast in one of those films so it's like every year breaking down like the macro goals into like little tiny detailed things. And that helps you like set up your long-term like 10-year plan.
Right. It's so perfect. And Tony Robbins always says like chunk goals into bite size. That way you don't feel like you set this big goal and then when you
don't get to feel completely obliterated by it and like you suck and that you're never going to achieve anything. And like I make my screensaver on my phone my list of resolutions. Like everything that I do, it's on my fridge. I have an Oscar like glued on my mantle of my mirror. I just want to see these things constantly so I'm reminded to keep going after it.
It reminds me of watching something of Taylor Swift, that documentary on Netflix, when she's like, you have to be obsessed with what you want to achieve. And
I love that documentary. And I thought that she was so vulnerable and smart in it. And it made me have so much more of an appreciation for her. And you have to be obsessed.
It did. And I think there's similar qualities to you in that it's like you do have this beautiful softness and vulnerability that it's just so likable, and people get so touched when they see you achieving and reaching these goals. It's like a part of us. I can only speak for myself. It's like a part of us just getting to be like, it's hard work. It's not given to her. You can see the passion. You can see the chunking down of every step that you've done to overcome it. And now we get to kind of relish in your success.
Thank you. And there were so many detours and things that, like, I had an acting manager in New York maybe 6 years ago who dropped me. And I was so devastated by that loss. Like, I remember just being embarrassed and feeling like I'd worked so hard to get this. And there I was, like, speaking on like panels and stuff, and I had just been dropped. And I felt like such a fraud. And then I had like this period where I was like, should I even pursue acting representation? Like, I keep on getting all of these opportunities as a writer and director, and like maybe that is what the world values in me. But then I reminded myself that I love acting so much, and that if I were to give up on that part of myself, I wouldn't even have that joy to put into my writing and directing. And I just like said I was going to give myself a weekend to mourn and do like what I called mope fest, where I was just like deeply depressed and felt like shit. And then after all of that, I was like, but by Monday, I have to come back and like hit the ground running again and start pursuing getting new representation and just keep going. And that's what I do now when I deal with a failure. I let myself feel it deeply and don't try to rush over it. And I let myself feel that pain. But then I have promised myself that on the other side of that, I have to like get back out there.
That's so smart. And it's a muscle that's developed from challenge, from loss, from failure, to know that if you do skip over it, it just breeds kind of that underlining resentment or what you said, the lingering fraud.
Right. Like you close your heart and then you don't feel like you can even bear dealing with that rejection again. It hurts too much. So I let myself have that pain. But then on the other side, every time I achieve an acting thing, I make just any sort of career thing, I also celebrate, like even little things, like even just like getting an audition with a new casting director or booking, like getting a callback or something bigger than that. Like whatever it is, I like force myself to do like a dorky dance and celebrate the tiny milestones as fully as I celebrate the grief, or as, I deal with the grief of losing something. Like you have to just, reward yourself when anything positive happens, but then also like let yourself mourn when you fail. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so smart. It's such a smart thing to do, is like fill up both buckets, and not just because in anybody that listening that's been in acting or any kind of arts where you're achieving, it seems like when you achieve something, the famous question is, so what is next for you? What are you doing? And it's like, pause for a minute. Let me do the dorky dance. Let's go out and celebrate this. Yeah.
Because sadly, every time you get a new big thing, as much as I want to say that I feel great for a long time, I feel great for a very short amount of time. It's like honestly taking like a hit of a really potent drug. And for a little bit, you're like, yes. And then I immediately get into that fraud mindset again, where I think, oh, it couldn't have been that big of a deal if I got it. And I just immediately get like that. And I have to like banish that thought, but it's there. And then I'm chasing my next high and wanting that next positive career accolade that will make me feel better about myself. That's just...
Right. It's kind of like the engine that keeps the train going, though, because if I was satisfied with that and I didn't have that, perceived negative thought to keep my fuel going for the next thing, you would have just won the first award and be like, I did it. Put it to bed.
There's a lot of people we know from school who achieved early success and achieved those early acting roles, or like the part on Law and Order or whatever else. They felt really okay with where they got, and then they sort of left the industry.
It means more to you when you achieve something that you worked so hard to overcome.
Yes, completely.
You talked a little bit about that manager dropping you. What do you feel looking back now in hindsight that helped you to reorganize going forward?
I felt like I suddenly listened to what he had to say. When somebody is giving you bad news or news that you don't want to hear or you don't feel ready for, what I heard him saying was, you're achieving all of these film things. I, as a traditional acting manager, don't know how to navigate or help you get to the next level. But he was really saying, I can see that you are going to be successful in all of these areas. I'm just not the right person to help facilitate that next step. All I heard was, you're rejecting me. You don't think I'm good and that you don't want to work with me. Now I realize it was the best blessing ever that's happened to me, because it opened me up to far bigger opportunities. I suddenly went from thinking, oh, an acting manager has no use for me if I'm making my own films, to finding bigger level A-list management companies who, like, now I'm repped by the same management company as Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie. And like, Greta Gerwig is the perfect example of somebody who is able to write, direct, and act in all of these things. And the big places know what to do with someone that has 3 separate careers. Yeah, I'm sorry, my smoke detector just went off. But
that's okay. It was part of the passion of, it's true. I mean, William Morris is the one, this is the top, I would say one of the top in the world.
Yeah, one of the top 2 agencies in the world. That has been something that has been a goal for me since I was 15 years old. And since, again, this goes back to Ellen Page and her pre-Juno years. I read that she had had a movie that got into Sundance called Hard Candy when I was a teenager, and that she had signed with the William Morris agency. And at that point, forever, I was like, that's the goal. One day, Sundance and William Morris. And it shows how we can influence people that we don't even necessarily know, but those goals became a thing in my head that I had been fighting towards. So when it finally came, and when I finally got the opportunity to be signed by them, I had like an out of body moment, like outside of the agency. They made me meet with them 5 times, and I was living in New York, and I was having to fly back once a month to LA to take these meetings. And that period of my life, this was 2018, was probably the most exciting time to date, because all of the work that I had done making these little films and stuff, suddenly they were being seen by these decision makers at a really huge level. And I was coming in and taking meetings at places that I had just always imagined but didn't know that I could achieve. And I'm suddenly like standing there outside, like, and I just remembered feeling like these goosebumps and this adrenaline. And like, it was like everything I'd ever wanted. And I was like so afraid that I would like mess it up or say the wrong thing. And then I had the final meeting at William Morris, and it was like 7 agents around like this big glass conference table. And they said to the other agents, like, and today we're going to look at the itinerary at this point of Sonja's career. And all of these like business people are like nodding and like addressing like the schedule of like talking about me. And that was the moment that I thought, I've made it. And now looking back at it, I realized how much work I had to do to go from that to having the kind of career that I aspire to have in the grand scheme of things. But that was the moment where I suddenly felt like I was in the industry competing at the highest level, and was now given all the tools to go and have that A-list career. It just became down to me on what I was going to do with that access. Yeah.
Thank you for describing that. It seems like it's so important to celebrate such a monumental success or event that you yourself achieved. It wasn't given to you. It wasn't from somebody you dated. It wasn't from someone that said, hey, you're pretty, I'm going to walk you in this door. Like, you got there.
And I did what you're not even supposed to do. I wrote unsolicited emails to all of the big agencies and told them the updates about what I was doing, and was strategic, and wrote like young, like queer female filmmaker, like in the subject line. And then when one place finally wrote back and said they would meet with me, then I wrote emails back to all the other power agencies and said, well, CAA is meeting with me. And then UTA agreed to meet with me. And I bounced everyone against each other until I got that first offer. And then it was sort of that I could be represented anywhere I'd wanted. But it took like being strategic and like using everything as leverage.
I love the outside the box way of approaching that and just getting it done. You talked a little bit about the skill set you didn't have. So when you made those big goals, you needed to develop the skill set to be the person to achieve that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think, like, at what point do you feel like you kind of, or I guess at what point did you develop those skill sets? What are those skill sets, and how did you become the person that you needed to be in the room with the William Morris agency?
As much as I would like to think confidence is something that we all are able to muster at a certain point, I felt for me, every time I would achieve a small little goal, take 5 casting director workshops, and some of them are like, or, go and attend a film editing class so I could like learn that process. The more that I would check off these sort of micro goals, the more confidence and knowledge I was acquiring, so that if I went into a big meeting and somebody asked me a wild card question, I was able to articulately answer it. So if I had done those things in the wrong order, I might have been able to be convincing and charming enough to talk myself into any room with these people, but I didn't have the body of work for them to be able to do anything with it. Like now friends are asking me all the time, can you refer me to your mega agency? And the truth is that I can't, because they aren't going for the most talented people. They are going for people that have buzz that they are able to use to get you jobs. Because those agencies don't go and get you jobs. They are more there to field offers. So if there aren't interest in hiring you at that point, they can't really be of service. Like you'd be better off with a younger, hungrier company who's going to do all of those sales tactics of calling people and being aggressive. And I had to do all the work to make enough films and do enough things and have enough casting directors and executives and production companies to know me that when the time came, I was able to hand over a spreadsheet of all the major production companies in town that already knew of my work. And then my agents were able to take that information and use it. But if I had come to them hungry and passionate and talented, but without the actual physical work they could use to sell me, and without those relationships, they couldn't have represented me.
That's amazing. That's so great for people to learn and understand that it's not this big agent that we aspire to have because we think, oh, they can put me in the right doors, the right people. They need something to showcase, it sounds like, to these right doors, to these right people.
Or they can't even do their job. And I know people that are just as strong as I am as filmmakers that can't get in those doors because they haven't done the groundwork of a million small things and having done the work to meet the right people. Like it really takes both of those things at once. And then the other thing is, once you get that major agency, what I think a lot of people don't do is they feel like they've made it. They're now represented by a star agency, and then they wait for their agents to do things for them. But the reason that your agents get only 10% of what you make is because they're doing 10% of the work. You need to do the other 90%. So I now go and write all of the emails to all of the people in the industry telling them I'm rep by this mega agency. And then they bring me in and I'm able to sort of bypass other people doing the work for me. And I'm still aggressively at the forefront of my career. And I think that makes me a good client because I don't sit around and I'm not passive.
It is the fundamental reason that I think of what success is created from.
Yes, I think so too. I think we have to go and make our own opportunities. No one will hand us anything. And when I realized that the old school path of just auditioning for things, it is a broken system. If you have not gone to Yale Drama or Juilliard or NYU grad, like you're not going to just get something probably unless you made it as a child. If you are an early 20-something actor trying to break in that other way, it's a lottery and everything's stacked against you. And once in a while, we meet someone who breaks in that way and more power to them. And they're probably brilliant. But for most of us, it won't come that way. And for me, I knew it meant I need to go and learn how to write a screenplay and produce a movie and then probably direct it and then put myself out there. And I didn't realize that from that, I would start getting offers to direct other people's movies and TV shows. That wasn't the plan.
Right.
But that was a beautiful byproduct that came out of it that now pays my bills and super is that I love, but that wasn't the plan. Many people go to film school and then they're trying to break into direct movies, and that wasn't my path to success. But through doing the other things, I became a really good filmmaker. And
it makes so much sense because even as a coach, it's just start taking action, start taking small steps because your path will unfold from there. A lot of people think, well, the how gets in the way. How am I supposed to do this big entire thing? And it's start with one step because you could not have predicted you'd be this award-winning director, writer.
No, I absolutely did not see that coming in any way. That was not the plan.
Was there a moment that you started this new path, as far as, was there a moment where you went to an audition or something and it didn't work out that you're like, I'm going to write and direct and produce it myself? Was there a step one that came from a specific event?
When I first lived in LA 10 years ago, and I looked about 16 years old, I was auditioning for really young roles. And I remember that I wanted some of these parts so badly, but they were ultimately terribly written, like insultingly bad, one note, like they wanted you in a bikini. It became more of a competition of how hot you were. And when all of that was happening, I was thinking, why am I working so hard for something that even if I got this role, I'm going to feel very little artistic, there'll be no payoff. And then I thought, why not, instead of spending all of that time just submitting on Actors Access, why not go take a screenwriting class and write? I can still be auditioning, and I was able to do both, but why not spend most of my time writing and getting this project off the ground where I'm guaranteed that I can star in it and play a role that actually matters to me?
What was the first film that you wrote? I remember when you posted that actually on Facebook, of being like, I'm taking a writer's class.
Yeah. My first project was a feature film called Ovum, based on my own experience donating my eggs in New York City at these places that were offering you $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 for your eggs. And I really underwent the egg donation process, and I wrote about all of it. And I made my first feature film that I wrote and produced and starred in. But for that film, I hired a director. And while watching what he was doing in that process, I realized that I was already directing. Like, I didn't bring him in until I had already cast the project and rehearsed the project and did all of these things. And then I was like, oh, I don't need a director because I'm already doing it. Like, I have always been directing my career. Like, I get directing.
So it's more of like a natural ability.
I had to go then learn camera movement. I had to learn the vocabulary. I had to learn shots and how to shot list and all these other things. But the natural ability to lead a set or direct an actor or to see things visually, I understood that innately. It was just learning the technical film side of it so I could command a crew mostly of men and not look like a novice. That took a little more time.
Right. Speaking of men in the business, is there any challenge of being a successful woman in the directing, acting business?
Yes. I mean, there are a few things. I've learned very recently that even though I typically have long hair and I wear floral dresses every day, when I am meeting with a successful male actor who is considering doing one of my movies, I have to do everything I look to strip myself of what we consider femininity. Like, I have to wear actual pants. I have to wear no makeup. I have to look as unattractive as possible, because when I go to that meeting, if they think that I am in any way attractive, they start to like flirt with me and charm me and do the things that but it is if that they think because I look a certain way and I look young that I won't be able to deliver. And I hate it. And then I start having them ask me things like, oh, is my director of photography a man? And like, they're asking about other men that are peripherally on my team. And now when possible, I do all meetings with male stars via the phone. So they just can't even see what I look like. And so I can just be my commanding self without having to look to them their idea of like a powerful woman in like a Hillary Clinton kind of way. That's been a challenge. And then the other thing is, on a movie set, instead of trying to lead the way that we see men lead, which can be great and effective, I've learned that I get the best performances out of people if I'm fun and playful and vulnerable with them. And I think a lot of men don't lead that way. So people almost aren't even used to the idea that you can be childlike and happy and joyous and bring that work to a set and get incredible work from every single person that's there. So the first few days that I'm on a new movie and I'm dealing with a male crew, like I did a movie in Louisiana and it was almost all men working under me. And a lot of those men were 40, 50, 60-year-old men who'd been in the industry for a very long time. They had never really met a female director, certainly not a young female director. And for the first week, I found myself like operating like the way that I thought I should be directing a movie, like much more like military style. But then after that weekend, everyone saw that I was getting great work and that the movie was looking good. I was slowly able to relax into like my actual self And that's when I felt like I got really good work.
There's so many amazing things in that. One of just really staying true to who you are and using the thing that challenges you or the thing that kind of quote unquote hurts you from being a female is also the thing that you use to get beautiful work and bring forth why your films have such a vulnerable feel to them. You film a lot on projects that I've noticed on sexuality.
Yes.
Or on it. Where did that come from? Or did that just sort of evolve on its own?
I think that for a long time, I felt like I might be bisexual, but I'm from such a small town that definitely wasn't really accepting of that. And I think the more that you feel like you're repressing a part of yourself, the more that sort of takes over a chunk of your subconscious. So the more that I was writing, the more I found that I wanted to explore that part of myself. And because I was largely dating and living with men, I felt like people thought that meant I was entirely straight, but I knew that I wasn't. And it was like the more that people treated me a certain way and that, I don't know, my thoughts of like being attracted to women became like this subconscious thing that I like felt shame over, the more that I would want to write about that. Because I think when we're writing, if it doesn't feel deeply personal and almost like it's so embarrassing that you don't want to share it with the world, I don't think you've written anything meaningful. Like, I think like if I'm not terrified to share it, then it's shit, you know? So I've been like trying to write things that scare me. And that's what comes out of, that's where these projects sort of end up being.
It makes so much sense when you witness the awards that you're winning and the feedback that people give you and the authenticity and the vulnerability that makes you so likable comes from a place, I don't want to call it of wounding, but comes from a place of what you said, like, if it doesn't scare me, I'm not going to put it out there. So your risk in taking that vulnerable piece and shining a light on it is the path to success.
Yes. Like I think everyone around me out here, and I don't know if it's an LA thing, but everyone's trying to write what they think will sell and what they think the industry is looking for. Like if suddenly there's like a bunch of zombie things, everyone wants to write the next zombie thing, where I don't write what I think other people want to read. I just write what I'm looking to see in the world that I'm not. So I know then even if no one else likes it, at least I'm passionate and excited about it. And I think the more specific your work is, the more universal it is. So it's like write about what you know more than anything else, and that will be authentic. But if I were to try to write a medical drama because that's trendy, I didn't go to med school. Like I don't know anything about that. I'm going to make a watered down, less good version of Grey's Anatomy because it's not what I know. So I really do subscribe to writing what I know, you know?
It's like owning your gift, owning you're in your lane.
Yes.
Nobody is as unique as you, and you're taking that and offering it, and it's just attracting all the success.
And the things that embarrass you, like I can't say enough, like in acting school, I just wanted to be like this cool, beautiful chick that like was effortless and didn't like, you know, like the I don't give a fuck kind of attitude that some people, I'll never be that. I care deeply. I'm a nerd. I'm passionate. I'm weird. And like once I stopped trying to be like everyone else, then I found my own power. But whenever I'm trying to be like anyone else, that doesn't work. And I felt like that was me auditioning for a long time. I wasn't just owning who I really was. And now that I am, and now that I have an outlet doing it with films, when I go into auditions, I'm doing so much better because I no longer care about what other people think the same way.
Did that come from an experience or did that come with age? What do you think was kind of the pivoting?
It was, I used to believe that my slogan in acting school and for a very long time was act or die, which is so dramatic. But I really felt like the only thing I wanted in the world was acting, and that because I wanted it more than anyone else, that made me deserving of a role. But suddenly when I started directing movies, I realized that it's actually completely irrelevant whether a person wants the role more than someone else. I have to cast the person who's just the most right for the role, whether they love acting or don't like acting. Like, unfortunately, that doesn't pay into the, decision. So when I realized that all I can do is be myself, and if I'm right for the role, I'll get it. And if I'm not, it doesn't mean that I'm not a good actor. But before, every time I didn't get something, I thought I suck and I'm terrible. Yeah. And now I realize that often the best actor that comes into audition for my movie, I can't give it to them because they look too much like someone else in the cast, and it will be confusing. Like that happened for the Root Letter movie. We saw all of these actresses for the best friend role. And a lot of them looked like our lead. And it didn't matter how talented they were. I could not cast them because audiences would have confused them on screen. So those people all probably thought they weren't doing great work and they were geniuses, but, I couldn't cast them.
That is the feedback that I think myself personally auditioning for things you just wanted so bad. I mean, this feeling you described it. And it's like, you never know. You could have been a phenomenal actor and what you said, it just didn't fit. So it's too bad actors didn't get like a little feedback form of like, it really was a great job, but this is the real reason.
I really wish that were the case. And I wish more people would just say, okay, great. Like, I'm not going to be right for everyone else's things, but I can go and make my own project, because I really think that's helpful. I think a problem is that most actors write about being actors and most of the industry isn't interested in that. So I do recommend, even though write what you know, write something that's a little more unique than just being an actor making it, because we can only see so many stories like that. La La Land was successful with that story because it also had music,
Right. Do you have a stronger love for one of them? Acting, directing, writing? Is there one? It sounds to me like it's acting, but is there one?
I love acting and I will forever, but I also get a different part of kind of fulfillment from directing. Like, one thing I love with directing is you're wearing so many hats. Like, I didn't realize how much I love working with the art department to come up with like small little hand props. Like, during this quarantine, I made a short film while following all the quarantine rules, but because I couldn't go and hire all the people I would for a normal film, I found myself making all of the props by hand. And I got like such a creative thing from like painting little objects and making UPS boxes. And like, I found that so much fun. And like with directing, you'll get to sit with all of these department heads and be like, this is the color I want the film to look like. And then sit in on the auditions and see actors do a great job. And it like fulfills so many parts of my head that I feel really like a more informed, smart member of the world when I'm directing. But then there's a childlike part of myself that loves to go on somebody else's movie and be there for 3 days and get to play a really fun role. And like, I love that, but it's for like, my ultimate goal is to have a show like Fleabag where I'm writing and directing and acting. And that way you're getting to use all of your gifts on something. Like, that to me is the apex. I'll never want to do just one of those things. I kind of want to do all three.
Right. And it sounds like it's just different muscles, different things being fulfilled.
Yeah, they're all different parts of creativity. And I think we're capable of doing all of them. But as a director, I just get to like have more power. And as an actor, you're largely powerless.
What would you tell other inspiring, whether it's like an artist, an actor, director, what would you, if they asked you if you could offer them a couple of things that they could do or words of advice or things you wish you would have known, what would it be?
I would say that you have to go and invest in yourself and show the world that you can do the thing before anyone can hire you in whatever your discipline is. I think people think that if they're talented and if they're capable, somebody will spot them and discover them. And I can tell you that is very unlikely to happen. You need to go invest in your own product and put your own resources into it to make something that is your calling card, because people cannot call you if you don't have a calling card. And I think that's scary for a lot of people to make that leap and have enough faith in yourself to put your own money and resources into it. But if I hadn't done that, other people wouldn't be able to risk financial investments into me handling their product if I hadn't been able to show people that I know how to handle my own money. And that's been a big thing for me. Like, you have to give the world a reason to care. Because without that, you're just another aspiring person.
And it brings depth to it. Like you said, like it brings depth to achieving. It brings depth to the passion, to the heart of it. When you have to do that, when you put your own skin in the game and when you invest and take risks in yourself rather than something just on the surface be handed to you or achieved easily. Yeah, it means so much more to you. And I think it also ends up reading authentic and relatable to the rest of the world, because people can just tell when something is genuine. Like, we can just see it. We know it. We just detect bullshit. So when somebody makes something because they love doing it, I don't know, that's so appealing to me. Like, those are the shows and the products and the comedians that I'm drawn to. And the vulnerability. you know, when I think of like comedians, it's like the ones that are the funniest are the ones that really accept themselves and can say the embarrassing things about themselves, because it's just true. We're all human. We're all messed up. We all have dark shades and all of these different things. And
right. Like, I want to see you air your dirty laundry. I want it to be the most personal thing. Otherwise, I'm not interested. And that's something that's hard, because I used to have this idea of wanting to be like glamorous and cool and collected. And that might be somebody's truth, but it's not mine.
How do you handle like the embarrassment or the thought of being embarrassed? So you put out your, I don't want to call it dirty laundry, but put out your vulnerabilities and the truth, especially with like sexuality of what you talk about. What do you do to like breathe through the process of being okay with that? And I don't know if you've been rejected on one of those things or not.
I mean, I can tell you that because my work is like that, my brother can't watch my work. My brother loves me, but he does not want to see me in a movie like having to deal with my like sexual demons. And I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to see my brother do that either. Like, it's not going to be for everyone. My mother has certain church friends that probably shouldn't watch my work, and that's cool. And they support me, but I know that my work is going to be somewhat polarizing, but I have to remember that I'm not for everyone. I'm not going to be the person that wants to pitch to Disney or to be a Disney star, but I'm the person who wants to do HBO. And I'm really right for HBO and I'm not right for Disney. So it's sort of like you need to figure out where you fit into the world and celebrate that. And instead of judging myself because every time like I'm not right for everyone, I celebrate that I'm really right for someone, you know? Right. But I get embarrassed all the time. And I use a tracking app for my emails when I send work out to make sure I know who's reading my scripts or watching my movies in a business sense. And there are times that I can see that somebody got 5 minutes into my movie and turned it off. And there's a part of me that's like, oh God, they think I'm awful or whatever. But like, I don't know, maybe their baby cried and they had to stop. Or maybe they realized immediately I was right for their project and they didn't need to watch more. Or maybe I deeply offended them and it made them question everything they believe in and my art was effective. Like, I don't know. Right. But I try to just not control anything. Like, I've had to just relinquish control and say, I'm putting my work out there. Maybe you like it, maybe you won't, but I'm just trying to honor my own truth.
And did it help to be given praise for that over time?
Yes, because at first you think you're doing it and no one's watching it and everyone's judging you. It would be a lie to say that I don't care about audience reaction. I really do. I care about critical reviews. But I've learned that you can't accept a positive review and think that somebody who is saying something negative about you is wrong. Like, you kind of have to realize that it's all subjective and it's all opinion. I don't know, but I do care. I have a Google alert for my name. And every time someone says something terrible and mean on the internet, it totally does hurt, you know? And one day I hope to like care less, but I think we all kind of care what people say about us.
Or get to the point of like turning that off. Or, I mean, there's something to be said that you just have to expect both, like you said, of just grieving the hard moments and celebrating the big ones. And it's like, there's going to be people that hate you and there's going to be people that you helped awaken their truth. And
yeah. And the people that make Oscar winning movies every year, the thing that wins Best Picture, if you Google it, there are reviews saying that movie was useless and terrible. So no matter how good, like any movie that's your favorite movie or my favorite movie, there are going to be people that believe that movie was so bad and shouldn't have been made. So if you're just in it to try to get people to like your work, you're never going to be satisfied. People will always be haters, no matter what.
So it seems like it's hard work, being true to who you are, vulnerably putting that out there, pivoting when, you know, you don't get the best reaction, and keep going, knowing that your truth is the only avenue it seems to go down.
You have to also be careful about the people in your lives. I don't allow people in my life in a friendship way or relationship way that don't believe in me. That is something that I have stuck true to. I believe that the 5 people that we spend the most time with are people that we are radically affected by and we affect them. And I believe that everyone around me has to be supportive and I have to be supportive of them. And I think that's important because a lot of us have negative naysayers in our lives who make us feel worthless. And no matter what, they do eventually impact how you feel about yourself. So I've been really cautious about having people who don't believe in me around me.
It's so smart because it's like you stick your hand in a pot of glue, some of it has to stick.
Yes, and it does. And if I had someone around me and I didn't believe that they could make it because I didn't think they had healthy work habits or whatever. Maybe they shouldn't be around me. Like, it goes both ways. Like, we want people that love and support you around you, or, because we're our own worst critic. I don't need somebody else in my circle also criticizing me.
Do you have a person though that you go to that is going to like keep it real, like honest feedback that you trust?
Two people. I have my writing mentor in New York. He's a writing teacher named Jason Greif, who works at NYU. And he is still the person that I send my screenplays to. And it doesn't matter if I've sold that screenplay and gotten a bunch of money. If he thinks it's bad, he will say, unfortunately, Sonja, I think that this needs work. And like, he doesn't really care if it wins all the awards. He will just always be truthful. And then the other person is my literary manager. Like, he is so hard to please, but I know that he will always give me the absolute truth. And whether he likes one of my individual projects or not, he is so on Team Sonja that he believes in me, even if he doesn't think every idea I have is brilliant, because every idea I have isn't brilliant,
Right.
Some are good and some are bad.
Right. And it's just, you need both kind of.
Yeah.
So you can't celebrate the good stuff if you don't have the sucky stuff. That's like saying you can't have a rainbow unless it rains. So you need,
and you
balance.
Can't come up with that brilliant idea and be vulnerable enough to go there without coming up with a bunch of ideas that don't quite work. Like, I have to be able to throw out a bunch of ideas, and be able to be free to brainstorm and not censor myself.
Is there something that you do if you ever find yourself creatively like stuck? Is there, like, some people go for a run or take a shower. Is there something that you do to help you kind of get that creative juice going? Or
one thing that I love to do is I love to write about things that are going on in the world and having my own spin on them. So sometimes it's just something like reading an article in the Atlantic or the Cut. One of my ideas was a space thing, and I read an article about DNA changing in space within twins, and I thought it was so interesting. And then I came up with like a horror spin on that, and that became my next project. So I think like reading about the world and seeing what actually excites me and what I have a response to. So many of my ideas come from just reading real things and feeling inspired.
Allowing that, knowing that's your avenue of receptivity. It's like, bring this in. I'm going to go read a bunch of stuff. Let it drop in.
Yeah. And then sometimes I'll be like, wow, I didn't know I was so obsessed with astral projection or space matter or whatever. And it will come from just reading about the world and reading the New York Times or whatever. Like, I'm like a sponge, and I constantly want new knowledge and to read new things.
Thank you so much for sharing all of, like, not just your history and the path of how you got to success, but just also being so open about what the truth is and how to find yourself in your work, how to put that out there. And also just like bringing light on the whole industry of the path it takes to get there, and that it is possible, especially for women.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think that this is the most truthful conversation I've had about all of this, because so much of the time I feel like I have to do sound bites and like say a certain thing. And because of our history, it was really easy to sort of like lay it all out there. And those are the interviews that I like to watch and listen to. So thank you for making it such like a safe space.
Yes, my pleasure. I feel like there's so much to learn from everything that you shared, and so much. It almost leaves me, yes, inspired, but also just calm about being yourself and trusting your own path and knowing that's where it came from. Your success came from when you just said, I'm not doing it the traditional way.
Because I can't. Like, I wanted to do it the traditional way and I didn't fit into that world. So I had to make my own path.
Well, I'm so proud of you. Is there any award, because I'm watching you win all these awards, what was like the most special moment for you?
I mean, when I won my first directing award at the New York Television Festival, there are pictures of me with my mouth just like slack open, and I look shocked, like they called the wrong name, because even though I was directing, I hadn't yet fully accepted that I am a director, because I thought that if I accepted that, then I suddenly wasn't an actor. And that's not real. Like, you can be lots of things. Someone can be a mother and a wife and a sister and a worker, like they can all exist. They're all parts of us. But when I won that award at the New York Television Festival, I was competing against so many big shows, and it was such like a large organization. And it just hit me, maybe I could do this, and maybe one day I could win an Oscar for directing. I don't know. Before then, I just thought directing was a man's game as much as and suddenly I was like, I can do this. And it hit me. And then I found my power. So that was a really beautiful moment. Even though I said nothing eloquent or coherent when I won, I was just like giggling, excited.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for paving that path for women and being brave enough and vulnerable enough to do it in a feminine way as well.
Thank you. This was such a pleasure. And yeah, sending lots of love. And I would love to come on the show in the future.
Yeah, so proud of you. Nice talking to you.
Thanks for listening to the Extraordinary Living Podcast. For show notes for this episode and all past episodes, head over to JackieSenatori.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Until then, take care and be well.